For more, I am joined in studio now by Ariel Osran, our I24 News Middle East correspondent, as well as Lieutenant Colonel in Reserves Jonathan Conricus, former international IDF spokesperson, as well as senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us on the rundown this evening. Jonathan, we have official confirmation at this hour. The IDF has retrieved the body of Mohammed Sinwar. He was back here in Israeli territory. There was a DNA confirmation. Now that Israel has his body, along with his brother, Yahya Sinwar, can this be used as any leverage when it comes to some sort of a ceasefire negotiations with Hamas still in the Gaza Strip, or do they care about something like this?
I'm not entirely sure how important that will be as a tool or as a leverage over Hamas. But I think is important, even though it is many days or a few weeks after the fact, is that for those in the world, international journalists and pundits and politicians who care about the veracity of reports and IDF targeting, I think this is a very good point to make, that the IDF struck a valuable military target. It tried to minimize collateral damage. It used precise munitions in order to complete a military objective. It did so, and afterwards was able to bring proof in this case, the body. And I think that's very important because Israel faced significant condemnations over attacking so-called humanitarian infrastructure. The fact that terrorists are hiding under tunnels is a problem, but it's good that Israel was able to get the terrorist and now is making the efforts, as we can see on the screen here, actually showing the world what Hamas had underneath that hospital and why it was a very justified military strike, even though non-combatants were sadly killed.
It's a major move in showing the world exactly why Israel had to do this and what they accomplished in that task. Jonathan, I want your take as far as the IDF arming this armed group that's also working with the Palestinian Authority. All of this coordination we're seeing, is this the right step right now for Gaza, or is there potential that this could also backfire on Israel?
Well, military history is full of parties at war using proxies and the enemies of their enemies in order to further their own strategic goals. Russians, Americans, French, Brits, Germans have been doing it many times. Mixed results. It's a difficult tool to manage if we look at military history, and I think there's room for caution and skepticism when it comes to how successful this endeavor would be. What I understand the Israeli strategy to be, without anybody saying it or presenting it to the Israeli people, is to try to undermine Hamas by whatever tools available, locally, in terms of international aid, humanitarian aid that we spoke about. That's pressure on Hamas because that erodes its power over the population. So that's through the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation and other venues. And then military pressure on the ground, direct pressure by the IDF. And third effort, to have rival Palestinian groups challenge the authority and executive capabilities of Hamas on the ground in the areas that they operate. A few issues that I think we should be careful of. The Shabab fellow, he is a Bedouin from the Tarabin tribe. The Bedouins are not the landlords and the masters of Gaza. They are second or third tier in the social hierarchy of Gaza, and that's important to keep in mind. He's not from one of the big families in central Gaza or northern Gaza. His family is in the south, and they are Bedouins. So that kind of limits the scope and general support that he'll be able to generate. Second thing, if we listen to his interview on the Peace Communications channel, I think he was his main point was, I'm not working for the Israelis. I'm working for Palestinians. We're fighting the terror of Hamas, the tyranny of Hamas, and I'm not working for anybody external. I think in Gaza it's pretty clear. If you are branded as someone who is working for Israel, that's a death sentence, or at least something that really undermines your ability to operate. So what I think Israel is doing is, like what many other militaries have done. Will it succeed? We don't know. It's still too early to say. It is interesting. I think this is still very local and small scale. If we will see this multiplied in central and northern Gaza with the main clans, the main families of Gaza, then that will have importance, and maybe that will bring Hamas closer to the tipping point of actually losing control over Gaza.
Jonathan, even with these assurances, would it be enough as far as Israel's security assurances that they need to get on board with some sort of a Palestinian state? Does this address them, or, like Ariel said, is this just unreasonable?
I think the demands are minimalistic. I think they are super reasonable and very, very basic, but I don't see the Palestinian Authority realistically really approaching them or even trying to meet them. And I agree with Ariel that there have been no elections. The PA contemplated doing elections in the the winter of 21. And they did some polling and understood that Hamas would win by a landslide and just cancel the elections. Hamas got furious, and we had those 11 days of fighting in the summer of 21. But finally, someone is making actual demands and conditions of Palestinians. That's very refreshing. We're used to Israel getting demands from Western powers to do this or that for recognition, etc. What I find blatantly missing from those conditions is a demand for the Palestinian Authority to stop supporting terrorism, whether financially, spiritually, politically, and I think that's missing. It should be a very basic precondition for anything. But bottom line, this looks to me as a direct result of a clear American statement made about a week and a half ago, where the Americans said, we are not in favor of unilateral recognition of anything, and the current situation is not to our liking. What I'm guessing is that this is the result of American diplomacy and power having its effect on Saudi Arabia and France, and pouring a big bucket of cold water over the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, and that's probably a good thing.
All right, coming back here in studio, Jonathan Conricus, the Shin Bet investigating a few different potential reasons for this arson attack, one being Iranian involvement, the other being a nationalist terror attack, both very concerning options. How do the security forces monitor these two very different but very concerning attacks here in Israel?
Yeah, the Israeli security forces definitely have their plates full.
Yes.
With challenges. We see, I don't have information that substantiate that this is an Iranian funded or directed attack. I'm connecting dots of the shattered window at the High Court of Justice, or the Justice Department in Jerusalem, and this attack. It's really very sensitive places that have been subject to very random violence out of kind of nowhere, which is kind of textbook mayhem and chaos sowing that we've seen in other places. And it would make sense for external actors, specifically Iranians, to try to do this in order to destabilize the society and enhance tensions. So that would make sense. It could also be deranged people, and it could be people with bizarre political agendas. Currently, it's all out there in the open, but what I would emphasize is that we see a growing and sustained, enhanced effort by the Iranians to infiltrate Israeli society. I think they've gone from low-level teenagers and people of limited understanding to more sophisticated operations, more money, and people of higher quality that are being tasked to do not only spray graffiti, but actually collect intelligence and prepare attacks.
Have to see exactly what does come from this investigation. Jonathan Conricus with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies and Ariel Osran, thank you.